Here we go. We're going to be doing our photo shoot today in the boiler room here at the college. Let's go take a tour first and see what we're looking at. So first thing I notice is it's about 150 degrees in here. And we're coming down here. Now this is the Edgy gel photo shoot that we're going to do. And I chose this location specifically because it's kind of got that grunge kind of industrial look. And we're just looking at all this stuff. It's important that when we do this to actually be respectful of other people's workspaces, even though I just invaded somebody that's working here and now I'm kicking them out. But we're just looking around, we're thinking what is cool, what would look good for some photos, different angles that we're looking at, how can we position our model, really just kind of exploring the space here and seeing what we have going on. We've got staircases, we've got a lot of different pipes and things like that, pumps. And when we do this, we got to make sure that we're not turning stuff on and off, and we're not messing with the stuff that we're not supposed to be messing with. But you can also do this photo shoot outside. It does not need to be done inside. Really, we're just looking for things that are going to photograph well. And we're going to be using gelled lights back here. So when I say gelled lights, I'm talking about colored lighting, right? Our model might end up having a white light on her, but we also need to get some colored gels in here. It'll just really emphasize this space and show some different looks. We're going to transform this place. The plan is to actually take some shots without using any gels at all, and maybe just use the overhead ambient light. But we're looking for angles, we're looking for different textures, different colors, and we're really just kind of looking around, exploring it. I always do this when I go to a new location. Sometimes it's more difficult because you got to do all the chit chat with the client at the same time, and they're asking you how your day is going, and you're being respectful and you're being honest as you do it, but you're also, your primary focus here is scoping out potential spots that will work. So let's go ahead and get our equipment in here and get set up. All right, we're possibly in the hottest room on campus. We're in the boiler room right now, and I am boiling. So first thing before we actually get shooting is I want to show you guys the equipment that we're using. This is the same equipment that I've gone over in the equipment video. Camera will depend on your camera or one that you check out from the school. We've also got this X Pro trigger, and that will depend on the type of camera that you're using. Also, they're specific to Canon, Nikon, or Sony. For our flashes, we got the 80-200. So this is our most powerful flash. We're going to use this for our primary flash. This is what we're going to try to put on our subject's face to light her up. And we'll have to play around with that a little bit and see if we can get it to work. But notice at this point, I do not have any kind of a gel or anything on here. This is just going to be a white light to start with. And we'll make modifications as we go out throughout this photo shoot. The next thing that we have is we have two of these. These are the Godox V1 flashes, and these are ones that we're actually going to put our gels on to change the dynamics of this room, to make it red, to make it blue. We're going to overpower these lights that are in here right now, and we're going to change the color of the room using these flashes. So we've also got a softbox in here. So this softbox is going to give us softer light as we shoot with our model, but I'm a little bit worried right now that it's actually going to maybe contaminate the entire scene. And when I say contaminate, I mean it's going to spread the light all over the place and it'll wash out our gels. And the whole point of shooting with these Edgy gels is really to lean on the color of the gels in the location and the positioning of them, and not so much trying to wash everything out with this. So we're going to try this and see what we get, but we always have the option to go back to our hard light using our unmodified flash. All right, to maximize the amount of control that we have over our flashes, we can set them up in different groups. Since this is our main flash, our AD200, I'm going to put it in group A. Now, the beautiful thing about this is, for me, A, in my mind, that's primary, it's number one, it's first. So this is going to be my primary light. I'm going to set it to channel 1, group A, and refer back to the settings in my equipment video where I showed you guys how to go ahead and do that. So my trigger, when I turn on group A and it's in channel 1, it will fire this flash. That's perfect, right? I can adjust from the camera position the power. If I want the power to go higher, if I want the power to go lower, I can do that all without having to come around and adjust the flash on the back. So now I have these other two flashes. One of them is kind of hard to see. It's in front of the camera here. And one of them is right here. These are the V1s. These also need to be in channel 1. Everything in here needs to be in channel 1 to speak to each other. So to get to there, you're going to have to hit that little lightning bolt on the back of the flash, and that will allow you to change your channel number and your group number. Once you get there, my initial thought when I went through this photo shoot was A, this one's in A, my main light, and my two gelled lights should both be in group B, right? But as I thought about it a little bit more, I actually want to separate them out again. So I put one of the flashes in group B and one of the flashes in group C. Now when I turn the trigger on the back of my camera, on the top of my camera, I'll be able to adjust all three of these lights independently. So if I just want a kiss of red, just a little bit of red, I can turn that power all the way down. But if I want the blue to really come through and really shine and be strong from the back of my camera, I can go ahead and turn that power all the way up for that V1 flash. Gives me more control to be able to really dial in the power of these flashes one at a time. All right, before we actually get shooting with our gels, there's a couple things that we need to do. I want to go over the settings in my camera, but really I want to talk about the importance of mixing it up as a photographer. We got access to this room. We planned this whole photo shoot. Sometimes the technical stuff does not work. We can't get the lights to fire right. We can't get the gels to stick on. There's always going to be a line of problems that stands in the way of you getting your absolute best vision dream shots that you want. So a lot of times what ends up happening is you end up giving up on using the technology. I've done this, I've seen it happen a lot of times, and you just end up using like the ambient light in here. So I want to bring on our model here. This is Sarah. She's going to be modeling for us today. But before we actually even get shooting, I'm actually taller than Sarah right now. Before we actually get shooting with our equipment, using our flashes and stuff, I want to photograph Sarah around in some of these positions, but I'm just going to use the overhead light to see what we get. That way we get a bit of an A and B. They won't be exactly the same shots, but it'll show you the types of shots that we get without modifying anything, just using ambient light. And sometimes that works. But here, the goal is to show you the power of those gels and how we can really transform that environment. So we're gonna have Sarah go ahead and go around to these pipes, and we're just going to have her pose as the way that she's comfortable. I'm going to be shooting in through some of this stuff. If you have an experienced model and they know how to do all their posing, they can go ahead and get started with it. But a lot of us are going to be working with individuals that maybe have never posed, they don't know where to go, they're not comfortable with this, right? It's our job as a photographer on a photo shoot like this to make them feel comfortable, to walk them through the possibilities. For this project, we're talking about edgy gel photography. So we don't necessarily want the classic type stuff, the classic poses, the classic looks. We want something that's a little bit edgy, right? Urban. Think of that when you're doing this, is how do I get something that looks like a kind of an urban shot? So Sarah, why don't you go ahead and step up here a little bit and go through maybe these two, this spot. Yeah, you can touch the stuff, exactly. Good question. You want to get your, there you go. She can fit right in there. And then I want to still shoot from here. But maybe if you are leaning up against that pole just a little bit. Yeah, and you don't want to get your client or your subject dirty as they're doing this. You want to make sure that what they're leaning up against is clean enough, or have them use their hand or have towels and stuff available. So once Sarah is set, we're going to go ahead. This is kind of position number one. You guys see this right in front of me? This could be a problem, right? We see this as an obstacle, as a problem. I also see it as something to experiment with. A gelled light could go on here. I could shoot through these cracks. I'm always looking to build depth in the photographs. I want stuff, if I can, get stuff close to me. I want the subject, and I also want the background that is maybe blurred out just a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the camera settings as I do this. The lens that I have on, I'm shooting a Canon R5 lens. It's a mirrorless camera. Students have access to very similar cameras from our checkout. The lens I have is a 24 to 105, so I can shoot kind of wide if I want, but I can also shoot fairly tight. Now, f4 is the lowest aperture. That's as big as that hole can get on that camera lens. So I'm going to want to probably shoot with f4 because it'll get her nice and sharp, but it'll blur out things that are in the foreground, in the background, giving us that nice kind of bokeh look that we talk about. Other settings is typically for a portrait session, we're looking at shooting our shutter speed at 1/125th of a second. And we're also looking at setting our ISO at whatever we really need to get the right exposure. I know that's kind of a generic answer, but every situation is going to change as we do this. So when I do a project like this, especially when I'm using a flash or multiple flashes, is I want to set my camera into M mode. I want it to be in manual mode. That allows me to adjust each aspect of that triangle, right? We've got our aperture, which we talked about. I wanted f4 to start with right now. My shutter speed at 1/125th, and my ISO. Now, a lot of times these cameras, when we get them and when we start using them, we find it so useful to use auto ISO because it will adjust and it will change all the stuff that we need to, and it'll create a nice exposure. It's great for outside, and it's great for certain occasions. I use it all the time. When you're using flashes, on or off camera flash, the majority of the professionals that are working in the world, they're going to want to actually pick a number for ISO. So we might start at ISO 800. I'm just totally throwing that out there based on experience. And then if we need to raise that ISO and increase that sensitivity, we can do that. If we need to drop it, we can do it. But kind of middle of the road when I start doing stuff like this. So the other thing that I want to talk about is the shutter speed. I said 1/125th of a second. That's a good place to start. You can always go up a little bit or down, and when I say up, I mean faster, so 1/250th of a second. That'd be twice as fast as 1/125th. Or we can drop it to 1/60th of a second. That's half as fast as 1/125th. But if we go too fast, if we go up to like a 500th of a second or 1,000th of a second while we're in here, my flashes will not sync with that camera, and you'll end up with a weird line of color probably in the top half or the bottom half of the frame. And for those who are just experiencing it for the first time, this can be extremely frustrating as to why only half your image is being lit. This is called the sync speed of your flashes and your camera. So we're going to try to play this safe and start at 1/125th of a second. We can always adjust and adapt from there. So 1/125th of a second is kind of where I want to start, because when I start shooting with these flashes, I want to eliminate as much of this ambient light as possible. If I were to shoot this at 1/10th of a second, which is a lot slower than 1/125th, it's going to suck in and take in all of this light. So enough about settings, I think. We can definitely cover more settings. We're going to cover them for each video as far as the settings that I'm using for each photograph. But let's get in here and actually start shooting some images of Sarah and see what we can get. I'm not going to use my flashes to start. I'm just going to shoot a couple shots of Sarah right here so that we have kind of a before image to look at. I'm going to have it on auto ISO, 1/125th of a second at f4. All right, Sarah, I'm going to have you go ahead and lean up against there. I'm going to go ahead and start adjusting. I'm in autofocus right now. I don't want to shoot in manual focus. The autofocus on these cameras is absolutely spectacular. So I'm going to go ahead. I got spot point for my focus. I'm going to put it right over her eye. Okay, do something more edgy with your hands. Maybe it's on your hip. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead. I'm going to take a shot. I'll put these up on the screen. I'll put both the raw file and the process file up there. I am shooting raw format for my camera because it gives me way more latitude to be able to adjust that stuff. There's times maybe when you want to shoot straight JPEG. I like shooting raw for almost everything. I just took kind of a medium shot of Sarah. So I kind of have her knees to her head in here, and I shot it vertical. When I go through and I do a photo shoot, especially when I start using my gels and I get really excited and I start talking really fast, I got to tell myself, I don't know exactly how the client is going to use these images. So I want to shoot tight, which might be just from Sarah's midsection up, cover her head. I want to shoot medium, so the kind of the shot that I just did, and I want to shoot wide to capture this entire area. And if I can, I'm going to do that both horizontal and vertical. 6 quick different shots using the same lighting setup so that there's versatility in the photos that we end up having. So we've got 1. I'm going to go ahead and work through this here. 2. Go even wider here. Now you got to make sure that you get your spot focus on her face and lock that in. Good, I'll put these up on the screen. I think that's good enough for now. It's just to give us an idea of what this room looks like without using any flashes. Let's go ahead. Step 2 now is we're going to gel these flashes and we're going to start playing with them and see if we can get some light into this room. No, but I say I'll have you look, at me. I'll have you look past me. I'll have you look at Amy a little bit, and maybe you're even looking away and then you look back at me. Those are good questions of like, what do I do with my hands? What do I do with my eyes? What do I do with my head? And like Amy said, click, click, move, click, click, move, click, click, move is kind of the idea of making it loose instead of it being so rigid. All right, here we go. We've got our stuff set up. I've got my first initial light. Notice my positioning of my light. My light is off to Sarah's left-hand side here, and I positioned it in a way that's a little bit higher than her. So the way that we have the light positioned, it is high enough that any shadows that get cast by Sarah as this hits her, it's going to drive them down. We don't want that scary lighting where the light is below her lighting up. If it's right at eye level, that's okay. This is even better to get it up a little bit higher. But notice I don't have any obstacles in front of her to cast shadows on her. I want to have a clear shot with my light so that she is well lit and that the focus of the light is on her. Light is on 1/8 power right now, but before I go ahead and take my first shot, I want to change my camera settings back. 1/125th of a second, f4, I'm at ISO 100, and I'm going to take a test shot and I'm going to put it up on the screen, and I want to see how much of this ambient light is actually affecting this scene. I'm going to try to cut out all of this. I'm going to try to make this room fairly black so that the only light lighting Sarah is going to be the light from my 3 flashes that I have. I get to ultimate control over this scene, and I'm not going to use any of these overhead lights, even though I'm going to leave them on, but my settings in my camera are going to eliminate all this light. So let's get up here and take a test shot with Sarah. She's going to go ahead and lean up against there. And right now, she doesn't need to be doing a whole lot of posing because I'm just taking a shot to see if I can cut out that ambient light. My trigger is still off at this point. I'm not trying to fire my flash. I'm just trying to kill the ambient light. You can do this outside also. If you're shooting at dusk, if you're shooting at dawn where there isn't a super bright sun, you can cut out that light and you can do your edgy gel stuff outside and cut out that ambient light and just have your gels and your regular flash affect the scene. All right, Sarah, here we go. She's just standing there. I'm going to go ahead and take a shot. Okay, we're at ISO 100. Let's go ahead and shoot this again. There we go. Almost completely black. There's a little bit of light, but it's not going to affect the scene very much. I don't want to go ahead and push my settings any further, so we're going to go ahead and use this. All right, I took one test shot, and the light from this flash covered the entire room. It's too much, so I'm going to go ahead and use one of these modifiers. This is the barn door modifier, and it has the grid inside of it so that we can actually try to focus some of that light more on Sarah and not cover the entire room. So we're going to go ahead and snap that on there. We're going to limit that light. I'm going to go back up with this one. Hopefully get it where we need it. Okay. So let's go ahead and take another shot and we'll check our power settings. Oh, see, that's quite a bit better. It's still really up high, but I'm going to go ahead and actually change the power of this. So right now that's at 1/8 power. I'm going to go ahead in group A and I'm going to turn that down. Let's go ahead and do 1/32 of a power. There's still no gels that I'm using, but I'm just trying to get enough light on Sarah. I'm going to go ahead and change the angle of this a little bit. It's hitting a lot of those white pipes. So I'm just tweaking as I do this, making the comfortable, feel comfortable, making jokes, talking about it. That looks a lot better. I'm going to go up a little bit higher with the power. But really, the reason we're here is to actually go ahead Looks pretty good. We're gonna start firing some gels in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put up some different lights, these other two lights that I have, turn them on and see what we can do with the gels. All right, let's go ahead and take a shot now of Sarah. I've got a red light and I've got a yellow light set up, and let's just see what we got. We'll start there. They're at 8th power and 16th power for the main light, and we'll just go ahead and make adjustments as needed. Oh, okay. So let's go ahead and fire off those flashes and see what we get, see if we can modify this environment a little bit. Oh, that's pretty good. This main one, let's see if my main light is actually firing. I've got some good results. I'm gonna put them up on screen, but Sarah doesn't seem to have any light on her face at all. So I'm gonna go ahead, do an old hack here. Photograph. So my light up here may have gone into standby mode and turned off. It looks like everything on it is still working, but we need to troubleshoot these things in real time when you're with your client. This isn't a mistake, and I'm not cutting this out because we need to figure out why is this flash not working. So it's turned off on group A, it says. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this flash off and start it up again. Okay, it looks like it's working. It's at 1/256th of a power. Must default to that. I'm gonna move this flash over just a little bit more so she doesn't cast a shadow on the pipe behind her. Let's go ahead and take another test shot. So it went off, perfect, exactly what I wanted. I'll put it up on screen. You can see she's way, way overexposed. But that is such an easy fix that I'm gonna go back down to 8th power, shoot her again. Looking pretty good. Still too strong. I'm going to go ahead and drop that down 1/32nd power. So from here, we go ahead and we're going to want to start posing Sarah. This isn't necessarily a posing class. It's more about technology. But we do, for this type of project, we want her to feel, you know, urban. Feel this is edgy, right? So we don't have to be super safe and hands in front of us. It could be hands up, it could be flipping the hair, it could be hands even up higher up on the pipe if we want. But we want to make her do stuff, ask her to do stuff that she's comfortable doing. And then we're going to go ahead and take some more shots. I'm not quite dialed in on my settings here. Normally I'd spend a little bit more time, get it just right, so then I can just start moving flashes around. Let me take one more test shot here and see what we got. Okay. There we go. I don't know if it went off that time. Yes, so I need it. It's got to be a little bit more powerful. So something else that we should talk about is when you're adjusting the power of these flashes and you go from something that's really high to something really low, you got to do a test shot to dump that flash. It'll keep that energy in there and it won't represent what it's supposed to until you take a test shot. So we got this exactly what we want. Sarah, I'm going to have you actually lean, maybe kneel down just a little bit, one knee if you have room. I'm getting a weird shadow in the back and I'm going to try to fix that by positioning her a little bit differently. There you go. Now lean forward towards me a little bit. That's it. But you're not smiling in this one. You're like, kind of like the upset senior or whatever. Yeah, that's it right there. There we go. You see now I got some foreground elements. I've got Sarah and I've got some background elements. These are just raw files and I'm making adjustments as I go through this. I'm at 1/16 power. Wasn't quite bright enough. So on the fly, I'm going to go ahead and adjust that. Right there is a perfect photo. We're going to put it up there. It's a good starting point for all of this. I'm not going to go through a ton of other settings and positions, but just know that this is kind of the general setup. At this point, we've got 2 lights flashing. For your assignment, it's to turn in 3 finished photos. And you can use different color gels. You could use one gel for some of them, but you can also use all 3 lights, 2 of them being gelled and 1 of them being white for your subject to be able to get the best results. A lot of this is going to be feeling it out. It's going to be location based. It's going to be based on how much time you have, a lot of different elements. But this is kind of the general setup that you would use for your edgy gel photography assignment.